How's it going, everybody? I hope you all are having a wonderful day. Today, I would like to talk about one of my favorite characters in all of anime. If I had made a top 5 anime character list, he will definitely be on it. The one I'm talking about is Kumagawa Misogi from Medaka Box. Now, Kumagawa is a lesser known character primarily because the Medaka Box series was never among the top tier series when it was coming out. It was an average manga that got two 12-episode anime adaptations. Unfortunately, the second season ended with Kumagawa's introduction in the second to last episode. Then the final episode was based off of the spin-off series that was following him. He's introduced in the Kumagawa Incident arc, the third story arc of the series, and becomes a prominent character for the rest of the story. He starts off as the primary antagonist of the arc, but then becomes a significant support character for the rest of the series. In the Medaka Box series, there are 3 different power systems. The first are the abnormal, people born with extraordinary abilities, like being able to sense other people's emotions to controlling electricity. Then, there are the minuses, which are a subgroup of abnormals. Abnormalities develop naturally at an early age, while minuses are born from some type of negative aspect of the individual, like someone being able to open up old wounds because they used to rip off their own scabs and preventing their wounds from healing, or being able to take damage inflicted onto them and pushing it onto others because they would push away anyone who tried to get close to them. And finally, there are the not equals, which are the originators of abnormalities and hold a far greater power than any normal abnormality or minus power. Kumagawa is the strongest minus in the series. He has multiple abilities throughout the entire show, but his 2 most prominent ones are All Fiction and Bookmaker. The ability that he has had since he was a child was Bookmaker. Bookmaker is an ability that makes people as weak as him. When using this ability, a long screw appears in his hand, and when he impales someone with it, their physical strength is sealed, and they collapse on the ground from a lack of strength. The ability that he is introduced with is All Fiction. All Fiction allows him to turn any phenomenon or action into nothing. He gained this ability from Najimi Ajimu, I think I pronounced her name right, after he had ripped her face off. More on that later on in the video. Kumagawa typically fights using giant screws that he can manifest at will, and he uses them to screw people to the wall or impale them with them. Kumagawa is notorious for never winning a fight. He's lost so many times but continues to get up after every defeat. Due to him being incredibly weak and suffering numerous losses, he's able to immediately recognize everyone's weakness and exploit them with his inhumane physical ability and durability. Also, due to All Fiction's ability, he's able to erase any injury, and even his own death. The only thing that All Fiction cannot erase is the fact that it erased something. So Kumagawa can't do whatever he's erased, whether it is a wound or a person. Once it's gone, it can never return. For example, during his fight with Zenkichi, they are fighting on the net above a snake pit, and every time one of them attacks, the net slides down a little bit. Zenkichi was in control for most of the fight until Kumagawa offered to tell him about the reason he transferred to the school. He then took advantage of Zenkichi's hesitation and proceeded to erase his vision. Zenkichi then decided to sacrifice himself and plunge him and Kumagawa into the Viper Pit. Both of them ended up dying from the poison, but Kumagawa undoes his death with All Fiction, and Zenkichi gets resurrected by Ajimu along with his sight. Kumagawa becomes infuriated and displays his real emotions for the first time in the series. He then states that not even All Fiction can return his sight, so he must have received an abnormality from Ajimu. Kumagawa's abilities were all born from his own weakness and his countless defeats. His entire character revolves around him losing as well as spreading his negativity onto others, only to develop into one of the best supporting characters out there. Kumagawa's personality and character traits all develop from his twisted psychology. He sees himself as someone who doesn't deserve to win, despite him being the strongest minus user. He has defeated multiple foes, but never considered any of those an actual win. He usually achieves victory by either using All Fiction to erase something vital to his opponent, or putting them in a situation where they can no longer continue the fight. So he doesn't consider it a true victory, and instead chalks the fight up as a loss. One of the best examples of this would be from the Good Loser Kumagawa Gaiden side story, which was adapted as the final episode of the Medaka Box anime. A man named Fude Azumachi, who has the ability to control colors, wants revenge on Kumagawa for killing the previous student council president. He uses his ability to make it look like Kumagawa's body was covered in bruises, and Kumagawa collapsed because his body reacted to it. Unfortunately for Fude, all fiction undid the damage, and he came back. Kumagawa then proceeded to erase every single color in existence, and then killed Fude. Kumagawa then stated that since the only reason he won was because he erased all the colors from existence, and still got a fatal wound to the eye, he couldn't count the fight as a win, and instead took the L. This entire mentality has been a part of Kumagawa's personality since his childhood. In a flashback, we see Kumagawa and Medaka's first meeting, when he was 4 and she was around 3 or 2 years old. They were both at Hakoniwa General Hospital, which is studying abnormal abilities. While waiting to be interviewed, he had a conversation with Medaka, and ended up stating to her that there is no reason for humans to be born, they just live for the sake of living. During his meeting with Hitomi Hideyoshi, the lolly doctor, he asked her to label him as a normal and even offered data on other abnormal users in exchange for her cooperation. She told him she's not doing this to gather data, but to help the kids live happy and fulfilling lives. After seeing Hitomi's unwillingness to do as he wants, he then proceeded to mention her son, and was wondering if they could become good friends. Understanding that Kumagawa was threatening her, she agreed to his terms. Kumagawa doesn't value life. He sees no point in living, but he doesn't like dying, which is why he kills with no hesitation. He's easily angered but tends to not display any form of emotions. He walks around with a smile and lies as easily as he breathes. Nothing in the world matters to him, not even the life of the woman he loves. Back in middle school, he became the student council president despite having an extremely low approval rating. It was thanks to the influence of Najimi Ajimu, his vice president. Kumagawa fell in love with her, but wasn't sure whether he loved her or her looks. In order to confirm his feelings for her, he ripped her face off and stared at her fleshless face, and then he was sure that he was still in love with her. Now, this event was the turning point in his and Medaka's conflict back in middle school. After that incident, Medaka proceeded to beat Kumagawa into a bloody pulp and forced him to leave the school. Afterwards, he went from various elite high schools, killing the top students and forcing the schools to close down. After successfully shutting down all of the elite high schools, he then transferred to the top of all elite schools, Hakoniwa Academy, where he is reunited with Medaka. The reason he transferred to Hakoniwa Academy wasn't just to shut down the school, but also take part in the Flask Plan. Now, the Flask Plan was created by the school's chairman, Hakama Shiranui, in order to gather abnormal users, perfect their abilities, and share it with normal people. The whole point of the Flask Plan is to create a world where everyone has equal standing at the pinnacle of humanity. Kumagawa wants to do the same thing, but in the opposite direction. He doesn't want everyone to be the pinnacle of humanity, he wants them to be the dregs instead. What I mean is that Kumagawa wants to erase all of the elites and gifted people of the world, and make society comprised of those who are just satisfied with eating and sleeping. If no one is superior, then everyone is equal. If no one has any special abilities, then they won't go against each other. Kumagawa is the lowest humanity has to offer, and he wants to make society just as bad as him, which is what probably birded his minus ability bookmaker, which again makes anyone hit by it as weak as him. Kumagawa does get reformed at the end of the Kumagawa incident arc. At the end of the arc, he had his highly anticipated fight against Medaka, but before the fight began, he had one of the other minuses kill him so he can meet Ajimu and get his old minus back. After receiving Bookmaker from her, he confronts Medaka and challenges her to see if she can withstand Bookmaker. Medaka accepts the challenge and gets impaled by his elongated screw. After getting hit with Bookmaker, Medaka gets support from the entire student body, even those who she defeated previously, and gained the motivation to defeat Kumagawa. After seeing this, Kumagawa starts to believe his viewpoint on life might have been wrong. Medaka then offers him a seat on the student council as her vice president, and from then on, Kumagawa is no longer the antagonist, but a significant support character. After he joins the student council, his personality does change a bit. First, since he lost all fiction, he doesn't go around brutally attacking anyone who gets on his bad side. Now, that doesn't mean he's become a total pacifist. In the Medaka successor arc, Ajimu frees herself from Kumagawa's bookmaker and all fiction that had previously sealed her powers away and erased her existence. She confronts the student council and reveals she started the Flask Plan. She refuses to fight the student council because Medaka is too strong for her to take at that point. In order to prevent Ajimu from restarting the Flask Clan, the student council recruited middle schoolers in order to train them to take over the student council after they graduate. However, Ajimu anticipated this and planted not equals into the group. During the selection ceremony, Kumagawa decided to trim the herd by calling the audience useless background characters and no-name drawings. As a result of his powerful negative comments, almost all of the recruits passed out, except for 5 students. Those 5 were taken in by Medaka and the student council, only to be revealed that all 5 of them are not equals planted by Ajimu. The 5 grow curious about why Ajimu had been keeping tabs on Kumagawa since middle school, and they decide to confront him. One of them distracts Kumagawa by asking him if he wants to see her panties. Kumagawa, being the huge perv that he is, excitedly says yes, only to be stabbed in the back, shot in the head, and berated by missiles. He was left beaten and bloodied when he was found by Medaka and Zenkichi. She asks him if he needs a hand, and he declined, stating that he needed to discipline his juniors. He then re-confronts the recruits and overwhelms them with his superior ability by screwing them to the walls. The recruits realize they are no match for him and kneel before him, apologizing for attacking him and pleading with him to spare their comrade. He gives up and takes another L, because he couldn't bully his juniors when they were begging him for mercy. The old Kumagawa would have just killed all of them or left them emotionally and physically scarred. Now he is satisfied with just humiliating his enemies. He may have become a better person, but he's still driven by his goals. There is a part where Medaka forces the recruits and the student council to compete in a treasure hunt, and the winner gets any prize that they want. Kumagawa wants all of the female members of the student council to wear nothing but an apron for a day. During the treasure hunt, him and the recruits are confronted with a card game hosted by the chairman of the Health Preservation Committee, Aka Aoiki. She is also a not equal who uses the ability 5 Forks that causes whoever is scratched by her to become ill. She challenges them to a game of memory, where if you flip 2 of the same cards, you keep them. However, they're playing a slightly different version of it. You have to draw the same card with the same suit in order to get the card, and you receive points based on the cards you just collected. If a player draws a joker, then the field is reshuffled and the joker is discarded. And finally, if the players draw double jokers, then their points are switched. When one of the recruits lost, Kumagawa took the hit and ailment for her, then proceeded to challenge Aka to the game. If he wins, she has to cure all of the recruits and him, and let them pass, as well as her school uniform has to be changed into a naked apron. Aka accepts and they proceed. Of course, Kumagawa, being the strongest minus in the series, is used to suffering and being placed in difficult and stressful situations. He calmly plays the game despite suffering from a high fever, as well as having Aka threatening to give him an incurable disease if he loses. Aka eventually reaches the point margin of 209 out of 416 possible points, and was about to call the game. Kumagawa then reminded her that both Joker cards are still in play. At the end of the game, there were only 3 cards left, with 2 of them being the Jokers. I don't know how there were only 3 cards left instead of 4, but we'll go with it. Aka realized that she only has a 1 in 3 chance in drawing the safe card, and if she draws a Joker, there is a 50% chance that she will be forced to wear nothing but an apron for the rest of the school year. She tried to convince Kumagawa to call it a draw and let them pass, but Kumagawa refused. She begged him to forgive her, and Kumagawa had no intention of doing so until his junior stopped him and told him that if he kept pushing it, she wouldn't be able to respect him. After hearing that, he gave up and agreed to her terms. Aka cured all of them and allowed them to pass. Kumagawa then revealed that he had stolen the Jokers before the game started. That's why they were never drawn. Since the match ended in a draw, Kumagawa had to accept the fact that he could not win again, even though he didn't take an L this time. After rendezvousing with the other members and recruits, they all rushed towards the finish line. Kumagawa was contemplating about who will get the prize if they all showed up together, and offered to allow whoever wants the prize to go for it since they all helped him get that far. The recruits then reminded him that without him, they wouldn't have made it past Aka. Kumagawa was touched by the fact that someone was giving him credit for helping them. It was the first time anyone has ever given him that type of credit. He then proceeded to screw everyone to the wall and stated that it will be the last as well, and then he rushes towards the finish line. Everyone freaks out and they try to get out of the screws without tearing off their clothes. When they catch up, they see Kumagawa was knocked out by Medaka for laughing at the name of her trial, which was Meta Trial, by the way. Kumagawa may have been reformed, but he's still a compulsive liar and will betray his friends if it means he can put them in lewd clothing. He's maniacal and intelligent. He takes more L's than anyone, which is not a weakness, it's his strength. No one has more mental resilience and is as skilled at deception as he is. He's taken the worst that the world has to offer and made it a part of who he is. Unfortunately, he never claims a dub in the entire series, but he doesn't need to, because he is the good loser. That's going to be it for this one. This video was a little longer than what I normally make, but I'm trying something new. By going into more details about key events, I can better explain the character's personality and psyche, instead of giving a vague explanation about why they act the way they do. I would like to thank you all so much for watching, I truly appreciate it. I hope to see you all in the next one, and remember to keep having fun. See ya!